Hey everyone, and welcome to the Forward Thinking Podcast. It's Chrissy here from CS2. Today I have Jessica Cow on with me, and she's the head of demand operations at F5. She also has a long history in marketing and marketing operations. I started doing the calculation, but I'll keep it to myself now because I don't. But definitely loads of experience. You wouldn't tell from that baby face, but and she has also been heavily involved with Marketo and their champion program. And so I'm sure everyone here has seen a lot of her content. What I love about Jessica as well is she has a history in the agency world where she was the director of client strategy and client services at Digital Pie, who then got later acquired by Merkle. But now she's in-house and she's doing some awesome things around using the product MOPS method, which is kind of what we've talked about on the podcast before, but really, treating your marketing ops team like a product team. So with that, welcome, Jessica. Thanks for being on.
So excited to be here because I thought I was the only person that was thinking about this, and it's so great to meet more people and others out there that are listening around how do we really think about changing our mindset in marketing ops to think, use it and more like a product. And it's been game changing, and I'm so excited to come and share with you our experiences and our learnings.
Yeah. When so I had posted something on LinkedIn and Jessica commented and was like, I'm doing this, and I was just like, oh my gosh, we need to have her on the podcast because it is very rare. Like Jessica said, it's pretty new. Some other teams like in IT are, like we've talked about before on the podcast, are adopting this approach of like, how do we kind of model a product team where, we have like a more iterative approach and really treat like what we deliver internally and, externally to the customer as a real product and having a product manager. So to start, I think, give me a little bit of background and maybe there's a history of F5, but when you came into your new role, when was it that you decided to pivot to this way of working, and what were some of like the catalysts for doing that?
I mean, I think a lot of, having come from an agency world and having had a lot of clients, and I mean, obviously you're an agency, you come in and you think about like, we're trying to solve X, and then you try to gather requirements, and then you try to build it. And when you go in-house, it's really the same thing. You just have one client, which is myself. So I met with myself all the time. Like, how should I consult with myself? Right. And, I think it was a lot of luck. It wasn't something that I decided one day. It's like, I think I want to run my team like a product. It was like basically, seeing things like on your feed that talks about it as a product, and other people like this like sprinkling of new ideas. And by happenstance or serendipity, that the organization that I'm part of, so demand operations is really marketing operations, but we call ourselves demand operations because we do have a larger remit. We're not like, we do marketing operations, but we are not just the ticket takers. Like, we really do have that influence. And I think having that product management mindset really is able to escalate our stance or our position within the company. So I'm part of the Global Demand Center. So my boss runs the Global Demand Center and the field marketing team.
And does that roll into marketing? Are you all part of marketing?
Yeah,
okay.
That was and what's really unique about it, and I think a lot of, I kind of want to take a step back too and just kind of say, like, a lot of the things that I feel like I've been successful at my current position at F5 has a lot to do with how the organization is structured. Not just my own organization. I have about 14 full-time, 20 plus 20 if you include all our contractors. But our Global Demand Center, also my boss also owns the project management for his whole team, as well as there are product managers in that PMO organization, which is really rare to have it sit within the Global Demand Center. If you think about it, that's incredibly rare. Also, he owns data science. So we can do a whole other podcast about reporting and how, we're able to do all this. I'm able to do all this amazing stuff with reporting that I've never been able to do purely based on org structure. So today, initially, we're talking about product management. So product management, because we all roll up into the same boss, I have access to a product manager. And it wasn't something I asked for. It's like, hey, we have this person that can come and help you. Think about, a cadence. Like it's very new to me, right? This idea of epics and stories
Mm-hmm.
and
Stories,
features and
features.
release
Mm-hmm.
notes. And it's when I started describing, like, describing what I do as a consultant, or what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to remodel our infrastructure, Marketo, Adobe, Visible, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, what I'm doing is actually product management, but I kind of suck at this. It's not my skill set. I know Marketo. I'm the subject matter expertise. And what was like, it was literally like magic, right? I have such an amazing product manager partner. And I just word vomit all the things that are inside my head. And he like makes it and lays it all out and repeats it back to me. And it's beautiful and it's organized and it's amazing. And I'm like, oh my God, where have you been my whole life?
Yeah, that is incredible. I think one of the things too, I'm a little bit like you, where I'm very like big picture. I love like or just like coming up with ideas. Okay, solutions, ideas, structure. But Charlie, my CEO, my co-founder, he's very operational, and he was the person who first started and was like, we've already been doing all of these things like for our clients, like building a roadmap for them, documentation, agile method, but we hadn't really like pieced that all together and thought, oh, how do we think about this? And from like a product manager, like you said, like most MOPS people haven't really understood that organization at all, haven't had access to them. And it's not really a skill that we are normally good at. I mean, we're good at a lot of and it does. Yeah. But the thing that's interesting is you can find it's a new kind of skill set that now I think you can kind of look for that's complementary, or it's something that you can also learn to do, right? Or understand. And so and the thing that I like about it most is that it's just kind of bringing order to chaos. And I think that, in organizations where small, big, doesn't matter in operations, because there's so much you can do, it can feel a bit chaotic. So it's like prioritization is key, right? Like, you need to figure out like, what's the, biggest priorities based on like outcomes, and then being able to tie your work to outcomes, I think is super important. Like product teams do that, right? They're able to see, okay, we're going to build this feature to do this, and we're going to then measure that, and then we're going to iterate it. And they're really thinking about that like customer. But in MOPS, we have internal customers. And so I think, that it gets, just once you get that concept in your head of like really thinking about, okay, what I'm delivering, I have to really think about the experience, the actual like UX of it and so forth, I think really matters.
One of the biggest things that my product manager has done, and he's kind of drilled into my head, is like, okay, we have to talk about benefits, right? Because us as MOPS people, MOPS people are super geeky and super nerdy, and we like to be like, oh, this thing and this scoring and tokens and this, and like we're so caught up, right? Like our default is to use that language. And I've given a couple of what we've done it at our Silicon Valley user group. We've talked about climbing the corporate ladder. We've talked about reporting. All of it is really about, and it's really about unlocking the benefits for your stakeholders. My boss always constantly reminds me, like, how are our stakeholders going to feel what you did, right? How will it impact them? When will they feel it? How will they feel it? And so even from my very first session with my product manager, which I kind of feel like is therapy at this point, I meet with him and I just brain dump everything and he makes it all into magic. But he starts with, okay, what are the benefits? What is our goal, right? Okay, our goal, everything is tied to, and it's the same for MOPS, right? And it's a lot of, we spent like 25 hours over 4 months, kind of, he was helping me, he was extracting my vision. He was extracting my vision of, okay, what do we do? Well, we scale we optimize,
Mm-hmm.
right? We increase revenue by doing what? I even forget what the thing is. We increase revenue, we scale, we're like increasing ROI, right? Those are the benefits. Those are
Mm-hmm.
the words that the C-suite understands. And then we reverse engineer everything that we do
Yeah.
aligns to those three benefits, right? And so that was it
Mm-hmm.
was a muscle that my product manager helped me understand. So when we talk about, right, it's, and then actually a webinar I did for Marketo a couple weeks ago, like last month, was on the like 5 key reports to getting a C-suite. The whole concept is about translating mop speak
Mm-hmm.
to C-suite speak.
Yeah.
Right. So like
Mm-hmm.
what are people doing? We want to see people engaging in our database. Mop speak, that's scoring. Right. So we take the
Mm-hmm.
feature, which is scoring. Right?
Yep.
What is the epic? What's the user store? What is the benefit that gets? Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it took, like I said, it took about 25 hours just to talk through with my product manager my vision of how I want to overhaul our entire Marketo instance, but translate it into language that people understand. And then one of the things that I realized that as a consultant and even internally, where things fall flat or like it doesn't get adopted, right? Whatever thing that our clients asked us to do and it just didn't get adopted, like we only took it up to like release. We didn't
Yep.
take it up to, it's like, if I only knew this when I was a consultant, we didn't take it through the change management, right? Because like the release is like
Yep.
almost, it's like 50% of the way there.
Yeah.
It's thinking
Mm-hmm.
about what is the release note going to look like, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
as our base. So he's got a whole template that we have to work through when we launch, let's say, for example, scoring. Or we're going to launch MQL
Mm-hmm.
priority. MQL priority is like basically segmenting your MQLs by contact us, hand raisers, organic scoring.
Mm-hmm.
Every marketer wants to MQL someone, intent leads, right? We have that's a feature that we want to
Yeah.
release. But it's like, okay, we did it. That's what MOPS usually does. Okay, we did it. And we throw it out.
Yeah.
But we're not taking it the rest of the way there by showing the value. And we talk about the value at the beginning and part of the planning stage. We talk about what is the training, enablement, and communication plan, and what does that feature release note look like that powers the messaging behind, well, is this a big release or is it a small release? And remember, some things, I mean, we kind of know, like I do everything in my head, which is why I need my product manager to pull it all out. But like you can't release a lifecycle change in the middle of the quarter. You have to time it right you have to time it so that you don't disturb reporting. So there are certain things that have to be sequenced, right? We can only release on the first day of the quarter. And then there are smaller things like, hey, we want to turn on lead source. It doesn't have to time with the quarter, but all of that is mapped out with the product manager, the sequence, the timing, the training. Is it a big release? So then maybe we need to do office hours, twice training, one for EMEA friendly, one for APCJ friendly. We need to do an email. We need to put it in the newsletter. Or if it's a small release, maybe it's just an email, but all of that needs to be planned out. Essentially, you're launching a product internally, and your market is your internal stakeholders, and especially in an enterprise company. You need to make sure that all you're selling a product. You want them, and when we put together the training, it's not just, hey, this is the scoring, and it's 50 points when you do this, and it's 80 points when you MQL. You have to sell it. So I almost start at the end, which is, let me show you what capabilities this unlocks for you. This is how you're going to feel.
Yes.
You're going to be, if we're launching behavioral scoring, it's like, how are they going to feel? They don't feel anything. If I did my job, right, I'm upgrading all the plumbing in the background. I'm just a plumber. I'm upgrading all the plumbing in the background, and I did my job. If you didn't feel anything, right? No impact to business. It's kind of like, how do we celebrate? How do we celebrate what demand ops brings to the company when literally you're not supposed to feel anything? So instead, I've had to be creative and talk about it, not in the features way, right? Like we shouldn't talk about features,
right.
but like, how are you going to feel? It's like, well, now we can have a conversation about optimization. We can have a conversation about, now we have levers to pull. We have different levers that we can pull, right? Or like, now you can analyze your data in this new way, and you can gain insight in this new way because I did all this crazy plumbing stuff that you probably don't care about. but this is what I
Yeah.
delivered for you. And the focus to 90% be on what is the impact to your internal stakeholders? What decisions can they make differently now because of all the crazy plumbing that we did? That, they don't care about the nitty gritty stuff. They don't care that we simplified 48 smart campaigns to a single one. I care, and it makes me so happy.
Yeah, I think it's deciding like, okay, it's very important to think about like, we call it IUs and EUs. So external users are like your customers. IUs are, your stakeholders that you're building these, products for. A big customer is like the SDR team, or the sales team, like you said, because they're like the people that might feel that most, or they're most reliant on like their process. But for them, like, they don't care about smart campaign. They don't even know what a smart campaign is. So don't shouldn't tell them, right?
It bites me and it gets at me when I do tell them, because then they start going into our business about how to architect. I'm like, no. You just tell me what business requirements are, and I will architect you the most amazing dream house ever. But you just tell me what you need. I think that's a skill too, is to be able.
Yeah.
And that's a skill that I think MOPS needs to have. And then obviously the product manager is my product manager that is so good at like keeping us focused. Life cycle is something that's so complex. And I remember, life cycle is one of the hardest conversations to have as a client, as a consultant, right? Because you're trying to like manage the sales stakeholders and the marketing stakeholders, and you're trying to get everyone to not kill each other,
Yep.
And this was the first time where I drew the diagram and I handed it to my product manager, and I actually let him drive the requirements conversation, and it was amazing. He didn't know anything about life cycle, but it was amazing because he knew how to like lead us in the discussion, to ask the right questions, to unpack the multiple layers, right? Because if you think about life cycle, it's how do you get into a stage? Well, when you trigger to that stage, which system does it? Which field changes? And if that field changes, what else has to happen? When are you not allowed to go into that stage? And like trying to have that conversation and lead it and try to take notes and document it is impossible.
It's hard. Yeah. It's really hard.
As a consultant, oh my God, life would be so much
easier. Yeah. It's part of the reason why recently we split out on our clients, where we have a solutions architect, and then we have our client lead, because the client leads for us are really focused on like, okay, understanding the client, like getting down into that like scenario based, like asking the questions. And, we really focus on soft skills with that role, because it's like they do know technically and they can do the work, but you need like a balance of both. It's like, okay, to what end technically can we do all this stuff? And that's where solutions architect is really great. But then for the client lead is like, okay, but how can we deliver something that, meets the requirements of the team, is a compromise? Like you said, like there's always like battling priorities and battling opinions. So like, how do you filter through that? And also something that works within their workflow, like something that's going to be really realistic, because we could try and over engineer something too. And so it's understanding the client. What is the client ready for? And it's something that your product manager probably does too. Like, and that's what product teams think about. They think about, okay, how can we make this so simple for the end user to use that it just becomes part of their workflow and they want to use it. It's valuable. It helps like, with one of their pain points. And it's something too that we can then track. And I love everything that you're saying, because I think that for a lot of folks who are really struggling to get that like executive level buy-in for, well, just one, support, which can be hard for MOPS, because sometimes we also resources. Yeah.
Just the value that MOPS brings. And I think it's really, because usually we're just we're usually like in the basement. We just, the impression that I think people get is we just send out emails and we build landing pages and we like run the webinars, and it's not that at all. And I think when you change the words that you use, right? Instead of, oh, I implemented lead scoring. That doesn't resonate.
No.
But like, hey, I'm able to track and cohort different types of people. I have high engagements and I have low engagement people, and I can follow these cohorts and see what they're doing so I can do more of that. That is what the C-suite speaks. And that's the value that you bring as a MOPS into the organization. And I think having that product manager, like my product manager doesn't know anything about Marketo, doesn't know anything about, MOPS, but he's a product manager. I think what it does is he helps you break things down. They can help you break things down into bite-sized pieces that basically then your epics roll into your, like, then they go into the features, right? So when it comes to implementation, it's already laid out for you because they've already broken it down into the building blocks, and then we put all those things in little discrete boxes. And then I'm lucky enough that I also have a project manager dedicated to my team, which is game changing, because what happens is my product manager does the what and the how of a project. So any project, usually I give them my big ones, right? Life cycle is a big one. Reporting and enablement, channels and statuses and just getting all that is a big one. Product launches are a big one. Like what is all the things that MOPS has to do when we do a product, when the company does a product launch? There's a lot, right? So I give him the big ones. The product manager dissects the how and the what. And then once we figure all that out and it's all laid out in epics and feature, I don't know how it goes, epics and features and stories are somewhere in there. Then
user stories, features, and then outcomes. Yeah.
And then my project manager then takes it to the what and the when and keeps us on track. So I would, like, if you can get one of both, get a project manager, since we're asking for them. And it's been,
but it's interesting that you mentioned this, because I think a lot of the times people are feeling the pain with hiring MOPS because we are like always looking for technical skills. We're looking for a unicorn, like someone that can have these conversations, but can do the technical work. And we're finding that like that talent's limited, right? Because everyone just like ends up in this role. Like we're not going to school for it, so it's very rare that happens. But this can become a different type of like resource ask, where you can say, okay, well, I'm still going to have these technical people on my team. I'm still going to be myself, where I understand the strategy and, the ways that it should be operated. But, it would also be useful to just, being more efficient is I need a project manager. I need a product manager. And that opens up the types of talent that you can go looking for. I'm not saying it's going to be easier. We're in a talent crunch right now, but it expands that. And it's just it can maybe help fill those gaps where it's harder to find these like marketing ops experts, especially when you have that talent already. But sometimes it's what's draining the marketing ops person is doing that project management. It's doing that product manager role where we're figuring out the requirements and distilling, maintaining the roadmap, distilling our, into user stories and features. And so I like this idea though, because then it's like being more creative on how you can better utilize resources and people when people is hard right now.
Yeah. And through all this, I'm like, as a consultant, a lot of times, when I'm on clients, like you are the project manager plus the subject matter expert, plus the person that's building stuff at like 9:00 at night to make things go, and then, just trying to juggle all of that. But having a project manager, it's like, I just show up to meetings. I'm like, what do you want me to talk about? You want to talk about nurture strategy? Awesome. Let's talk about nurture strategy. What do you want to talk about today? You want to talk about how we're, reimagining our website and what we need to do in the next 12 months? Okay. But then I don't have to have the brain space, especially with 2 little kids. There's not a lot of space up there left. So like, okay, did we schedule this meeting, or what's next on the agenda, or what's the next action steps, and who do we need to follow up on? A good project manager and a good product manager is game changing into the impact that you can make from a MOPS perspective on the company. And I literally don't think I could have gotten through that lifecycle conversation without my product manager. And
Yeah.
yeah.
One thing that I think would be useful to talk about, and it seemed like it was probably a bit easier for you because of the, like you said, the overall structure in your company that helped give you that like resource and also the way of thinking. But for some people who maybe don't have that, and but they do want to try and get executive level buy-in, because I always say at the beginning of this, like, in order to make this work, you need executive level buy-in, because it's a paradigm shift, really. Like, you're making a big shift in like how your team's operating and also how other cross-functional teams are working with you, because then a lot of times you're going to have like team coalitions that need to work together because your outcomes are being long-standing, right? You're going to, like you said, maybe it's increasing pipeline, maybe like it's velocity. There's different kind of key outcomes depending on the company, but there's going to be different stakeholders across those teams that are going to have to be, working together. So do you have any like kind of tips, or maybe even when you first started, was there a certain like way that you approached getting that support to make the change? And what was some of that like talk track or language you use? Because I think that's really important for some of our listeners to like be armed with that.
No, absolutely. And I think, it's again, that change in language, that change in mindset as a marketing operations leader, and and how you talk to your boss and upper management and the CMO. And I've always believed that marketing operations is, I mean, we already know, right? All of us here already know that they're really at the center of everything, right? We make marketing go. Without us, nothing goes. But we are an accelerant to marketing. When done right, we accelerate every aspect of marketing that happens. We can make things go faster. We can decrease the cost. We can give you increased ROI because we can show you the data and the insights on what is working and what isn't, right? At the end of the day, all your CMO really cares about is like, here's the money. Show me what you can do with it. As a field marketer, as a marketer, you're given if you're given $1 million, you got to make decisions on how you're going to spend that money. Where does that data come from? So marketing operations, we own the source system of the data. Everything from board slides to like how we as a company in marketing talk about our impact on the company is 100% related to our utilization of Marketo and Visible, right? Visible is what powers all of the data, all the plumbing that's in the background that powers all of our conversations. How we look at how we're doing our conversations at the IC level, right? They're like putting out the webinars and things like that all the way up to the top. So we have an incredible amount of privilege and responsibility because when it's not set up correctly, the whole company feels it. So, as in marketing operations, we have to own that. We're more than just like we make emails and we, build programs in our marketing automation system, but we really have to own the responsibility and the influence that we have. And a lot of times, we'll lean in and put on the marketing hat, right? Like I started my life as a field marketer, and then I went into marketing programs and demand gen, and out of necessity did marketing operations because I didn't have a marketing operations person. And then like marketing operations is my jam. I love it. But a lot of times I continually to tell my team that we are the organization that sees it all, right? You can have American field marketing, they're in their worlds. You can have LATAM field marketing, they're in their world, but everything comes through our fingers. Like we literally see everything. So we can provide insight that no one else can, right? We can see patterns and changes that no one else can. And it's bringing these insights. I used to, like a long time ago, I used to have a client and I did the reporting and analytics, and I used to be like, Fun Fact Friday. Did you know, right? Fun Fact Friday, did you know your best performing content was blah, blah, blah? Or Fun Fact Friday, did you know that all of those people that you just signed up for your conference, we didn't opt them in? Whoops, right? So now the data didn't pass, right? Like, we see so much. We have so much
Yes.
influence. And it's almost like I tell my team, I tell other marketing operations leaders out there, you have to own it, but you have to use the right language. You have to speak in terms of this thing that we're going to do. We know we're going to increase, MQL to meeting conversion rate. That increase of, X percentage conversion rate is equal to X $1 million of marketing pipeline, right? That's what they speak, and I feel like sometimes we, in many organizations, sometimes we're so focused on, we need the exact number, but we don't. We need it good enough so that we can make the next best decision.
Yes. Yeah. And most model, like with anything, I love everything that you're saying. I love, I think that it's always great, like to have, someone just like preaching like things that you're like, yes, 100%. And, I love that what you talk about is like the responsibility, but also it's like kind of like privilege with the role too, because like, it's just so expands like where we can go with our careers, because, and I always say this, and people like, I've had people comment back to me and be like, no, that's not right. And whatever, I don't care. But I'm like, marketing ops leader or like someone who's coming to marketing ops is almost like better positioned to be a CMO than through any other part of marketing, because we see everything. We're seeing what works. We actually keep up on like best practices for everything, how to run an event, how, paid programs. And but we're also seeing what works and what doesn't. And then we also are figuring out, okay, how do we influence people? How do we influence stakeholders? How do we speak their language? How do we like get people to like change? And then we understand the data, what really matters, and how do we articulate that to the C-suite?
We're teaching.
That's all something that a CMO should like understand and be able to do, right? Because at that point,
part of what, and I know I sent you my deck, but like there's 5 areas. There's 5 specific areas that everything that we do falls under from marketing operations. When I
okay, I'm glad you're going into this because I've been caught up in everything. I forgot to mention this. Okay, yeah.
Now I can't remember. I know one was database health, one was reporting enablement, one is campaign execution, one is life cycle, and one is lead qualification. Like everything that we do in MOPS falls under those categories, but we're typically so caught up in scoring and sourcing and channels and life cycle and widgets and templates and landing pages. Like that's not the language that people speak. Everything that we do goes into those five categories. And one of those biggest ones is data literacy. Data literacy. Yeah. I have like people on my team dedicated to building training courses because we're responsible for the source data, right? It's ours to make good or not good.
Maintain.
So we're responsible for the source data. But also, I'm very fortunate to have an amazing partner on the data science team, which also sits under my boss's organization, which is very rare. So I have a very strong
that is rare.
Science. And so they catch all of the data and then they make magic happen, and then it shows up in these beautiful Tableau dashboards. But that's not the end. And if people who know me in the community know my big thing is around analytics and reporting. And so the job doesn't stop there, that you just built the webinar program and you shove the data over and it magically ends up in a Tableau dashboard. It's enabling our end users, our stakeholders, our marketers of how to use the data to analyze or to do what you want, right? It's like, if I have this question, which pieces of which dashboard should I be using to go and answer that question? Because if that doesn't happen, then your value isn't realized. So it is in your best interest to make sure they understand how to use the data that you worked so hard to plumb to get to the other side. And if if it doesn't have eyeballs from your stakeholders, then there's no realization of that value. So you got to take it to the finish line, which is to make sure your stakeholders know. So we have like data doctor sessions. We're building a curriculum of like, if you have these 5 questions, and building like recordings and vignettes and things, and like small bite-sized training videos, and like, we're
Yeah.
putting together like quick start guides, on how to do this. I'm taking a lot of the content that I've built for Marketo and taking it in-house, and like, okay, this is how you A/B test. This is how you generate hypothesis. This is how you look at data. What's statistically significant? All of those things, most marketers don't know how to do that. And you know what? It's not just like don't think that you just have to do it yourself. Right? Like
Right.
we have an internal speaker series, and so I just bring in external speakers, to bring in all this goodness. I have I use the cross pollination of the Marketo community, right? Because we're learning from each other. So what that doesn't stop with, we learn from other people. That's why you're sitting here watching this podcast. But you can bring all these external people in house to have a speaker series.
Yeah.
Or I have paired people on my team with other Marketo champions to mentor. I'm like, I can't mentor everybody, so let me outsource. And
Yeah.
I outsource some of the mentoring to other folks that are probably listening. So you don't feel like you have to, the weight of all of it is on your shoulders, right? MOPS is all about scalability, so let's scale.
Yeah, I love that. I think that we even do the same thing too. Like we have Caffeine and Brains, which is our weekly training, and sometimes the internal team will train each other, but also like we're bringing in special guests and to train. And yeah, I think mentorship opportunities, there's a lot of great mentorship opportunities out there, but I think for managers too of the MOPS organization, I think that's key, especially if you're like a demand gen person, but a marketing ops person rolls into you, you may not understand their world as much. So it might be worth like going out and finding a mentor for them or supporting them and finding a mentor. And it doesn't have to just fall on you, because I think that's partly too where there become like with lack of resources, you said like lack of or wanting to do everything. It's like, no, let's be smarter about how we best leverage resources. And I think that's great to hear for people, because I think the limiting factor for MOPS is like time, right? Like it's just always like everyone, it's just like time and because of the resources, but just like having creative ways of thinking about what you can do to best manage that. And I think the product MOPS method, I always say, is actually good because it's really good at deflecting. So like you said, like, so if you have a roadmap and if you are tracking to certain outcomes, you're only working on certain projects, you can have then something in Artifact that when someone's trying to get on, like send you work your way, you're like, sorry, this
Backlog.
is not,
backlog, my new favorite word, backlog.
Yeah. And so that's your way of deflecting. And you have this living, breathing thing. You can be like, I'm sorry. Like, and it's not a no, it's a, maybe we'll get to that. And if we can prioritize it the right way, like, does it have high impact? What's the effort like? And can we fit this in?
And forget like right in the product management world, there's so much.
Yeah, it's like a Eisenberg
that one. It's like,
or something.
Like impact level of effort. We talk a lot about t-shirt size, to size the project and things like that. And I think what also really helped from a marketing operations perspective, and it's somewhat related to product management, but not really, but it's actually project management. But like basically MOPS gets a lot of requests all day long. Everything's on fire all day long. And it was just, and it was really, the requests that we get always are typically about reporting, because that's how they feel it, right? That's how they feel what we do, right? They submit a ticket, stuff gets built. That's table stakes, right? There's no, right? But it's always usually like reporting, like, I want to see data this way, or how come I can't see this? And we were just getting hit left and right. And there was, people just put meetings on my calendar, and a bunch of people. And so one of the things that I started out of all of this was something that I call reporting council. And reporting council is a formal entity, right? There's an intake form. There's a project manager dedicated to running that. There's a triage council. And then there's an actual, like a council of my peers plus my boss, to when we need final decision of like, these are the things that we're working on right now. And someone else wants, like, they need this and they need this urgent. Great. We've done the intake, we've done discovery. What's going to come off our plates in order to do this? right? So then you place it not on an individual saying no. It's not like MOP saying no. It's not Jessica saying no. It's the reporting council has decided, yay or nay. The reporting council has decided that it is on deck next after we finish this. The reporting council has decided that we will reevaluate in FY23. So it's a very like someone wants to make a change in scoring. Someone wants, right, because they want something different. Someone wants to make a change in how we do X, Y, Z. Great. Let's put it into reporting council. Let's discuss it. Right? Because then there's a body, there's an independent person and entity that we can prioritize. Is this backlog or is this on deck or is it super important, approved, go do? And then then there's monthly updates that get sent out of where we're at and what's on deck, because everyone needs everything right now, but at least they understand capacity and resources, and then the right resources get dedicated instead of we're trying to juggle too many things. And honestly, like that between reporting council and product management are really the two like game changing things that having been at F5 since March are like what, like those are the two things that I'm like really the most proud of, but that are really game changing, that are new, and that I will take with me wherever into the future.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the reporting council kind of reminds me of what we're trying with the bite size with on this podcast, and or within like an analytics framework, because like it's always those requests like, oh, I need this, and data literacy goes into that, because I think also too, like if you can get people the tools that they can be more self-sufficient in getting the insights and reporting that they need, then there's a deflection point. But I like the reporting council, like a council of people actually making those decisions. And I think that depending on the org, like it might be a reporting council, or it might be, some other type of council, because you might have another area where there's maybe some chaos or
data.
A lot of requests or something.
Data. I know that in other MOPS organizations, right? Like you can't just create a field whenever you feel like it, right? There's some governance, creating new channels and status, and I think you're right. It's the concept of, different companies will have different needs, right? But it's to manage the chaos and just getting pelted every day with these requests. And how do you prioritize? So for MOPS, for our own MOPS, we have the roadmap. My product manager has mapped out the roadmap. There's certain things, right? Like product launches are like, we can't not do them. What can we push out on our roadmap? And then you can just deflect like, yes, that is FY23, or yes, we can do this small piece. We can do A, but not B, C, and D.
Yeah. So, and setting expectations, I think, is key. Like happiness is like reality, minus expectations. And I think that, you need, if you're setting your expectations correctly, like people are going to be like, it's because I think this is where MOPS goes wrong too. We're like, oh yeah, we can do that. Yeah, no. silence for a long time. And then they go, oh, someone checks in, where's this thing? Oh, sorry. Like, we got bogged down, and maybe we could do it by this time. If you're just like getting to a cadence of just setting expectations up front, it's just better too for their happiness, because it's way worse to under deliver than to just be honest and say like, okay, we can get that to you, but it's going to be here. Or also, here's a compromise. Here's this, but let's plan to do this. And so, like you said, like taking on too much and then like trying to do it all is worse than just saying, okay, yes, but not now, right, or later. Because and also,
right, like pick the things that matter. And like for any instance, like anytime I go into, anytime I went into a client or come into my own instance, it's like infrastructure. It's like, are the walls going to collapse right now? And those for me are in the Marketo world, channels and statuses as one, right? Channels and statuses. If we're using visible, obviously the visible statuses or visible channels. Channels and statuses, sourcing, and scoring. Those are my three. Like, I can't do anything. I'm totally blind without having those like tick and tied. And then life cycle, MQLing.
life cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
Life cycle, MQL, like like I can limp along if I just have a good MQL process, and
Yeah.
some, but yeah, like life cycle is one of the hard, like it's a harder one because it involves so many other stakeholders. But those are my three, like I can't do anything unless I make sure I have those, four pillars: sourcing, scoring, channels and life cycle, right? Like as my pillars of foundation, because those are the things that are going to help you like do the things that really matter. Like do less things, right? But do them well. It's taken us about 6 months to untangle our scoring, but now we have really solid infrastructure for scoring. And now it unlocks so many possibilities. It unlocks so many capabilities, and that's what we're going for. We're not going for like cool widgets. We're going for what capabilities are we going to unlock for our stakeholders? What can the field marketer do now that they can't do before? Wow. Now we can see, depending on where you came from, did you come in from paid media, or did you come in from organic search? Did you come in like, what are you like? Are you highly engaged or not so engaged? Before you'd have to go and click on every record. Now I can just look at scoring. I can very quickly see,
right,
these people did 3 things, these people did 2 things, these people did 1 thing. Like, it doesn't have to be fancy. We have like one scoring. Everybody gets 40 points if you do something. Right? Is that the end state? Of course not. But like, you don't have to go fancy. I was just talking to a colleague of mine this morning that I used to work with. And it's like, you don't have to like launch the whole thing. You can do it in bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
It's not going to be perfect. And I think that's one of the things that's the hardest lesson that I have had to learn, right? Because I know what the most beautiful Marketo instance looks like and how I would want it to be. And that's not reality, given the history, the political climate, who owns what, the history, the skeletons in the closet. But that's okay, because we're moving forward and we're unlocking capability. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're unlocking new capabilities, and that's the win.
Totally. I feel like that's an agency learned lesson, because also too, you don't really have like, you see everything. And also you really get to understand like why decisions were made or why they were to where they are. But you also know that like action is way more valuable than trying to get things perfect, because nothing's perfect. You always have this element of postmortem. And then getting to that iterative process is actually what a product method actually gets you to, because when you have a feature, you deliver it, doesn't mean it was perfect. You might have to like improve that feature on your next, release and so forth. And that's things that I think would be, a huge takeaway, is like knowing like you can size these out, like you can deliver part of a feature and then build upon it the same way, product teams do. And so I love that. I know we're coming up to time, and I feel like we're going to have to schedule a follow-up, because this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like
let's do it again.
Yeah, do it again. Exactly. Yeah. And I especially love women and ops and the thought leadership, and we're experts, and you are a true expert in what you do, Jessica. So thank you so much for sharing your tips and tricks and just this forward thinking. If I could stamp forward thinking to this, it's adopting this method. And so thank you so much for sharing it with our audience today.
Absolutely, pleasure.
All right, everyone. Well, if you want to check in with Jessica Kao, it's Jessica Kao. You can find her on LinkedIn. She works for F5. We'll share her LinkedIn profile. And also, if you enjoy this episode of Forward Thinking, definitely share with your colleagues and friends, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.